Good afternoon, everyone. Our group proposal is on helicopter parents. It's going to be a support group, and the presentation is done by Heather Bazowski, Kristen Key, and Maria Manzano. Next slide. So what is a helicopter parent? So both Perez and Kelly reported that helicopter parenting is a version of overparenting. This type of parental control is characterized by parents who hover over their child or children. Helicopter parents will resolve potential problems and rescue their children from issues, difficulties, or challenges in inappropriate ways, not allowing for their offsprings to develop according to their age. Generally, these type of parents are high on warmth, but also high on control. And these parents believe that they are doing good and feel like they're being good parents by fixing their children's problems. More information provided by Kelly reported that, as well-intended as their behaviors are, this population of students or children dealing with helicopter parents are impacted negatively. Some of those negative outcomes are lower coping efficiencies, higher levels of interpersonal dependency, decreased levels of psychological well-being, higher levels of reported prescription drug use for anxiety or depression, higher levels of reported recreational use of pain medication, low levels of self-confidence, decreased levels of school engagements, issues with adult identity development, and exaggerated psychological entitlement. Schifrin and Lees explain that college students of this population may also deal with lower academic achievement and have a harder time relating to their peers. Furthermore, children of helicopter parents are discouraged from anonymous behaviors or are shown very little support when they attempt to do something for themselves. The sense of self that one is autonomous, and able to make their own decisions and face consequences is not entirely present with this population. So therefore, our group is going to exist for students to share their experiences and feelings about their relationship with their parents and thoughts on their current selves. Research has also shown that American ideas about parenting have shifted. Parents are more accepting of helicopter norms than compared to other generations. Different factors account for this parenting style and ideas. Parents nowadays have more knowledge and are more concerned with safety issues. One major factor that played into this is technology. Parents are now able to remain in constant contact with their children through cell phones. More information by Kelly and the other researchers describe cell phones as I think it was like an electronic umbilical cord, which, so cell phones allow parents to exert control over their college-age children, even over a long distance. They report that the rise in helicopter parenting is largely due to the growth in technology. Parents have a lot more access to information, including location and who the students are communicating with. Furthermore, children of helicopter parents will usually call their parents to vent, and this gives the parents the opportunity to go full helicopter mode. Another factor is that parents fear the economy's insecurities along with the rising cost of college tuition. Some say that helicopter parenting begins as early as pregnancy. However, much of the research has only focused on individuals between the ages of 18 to 22, which is considered emerging adulthood. And the reason that this population is at a higher risk It's because they can be greatly affected developmentally due to the overparenting styles. So our group is intended for college. Oh, can you go to the next slide, please? So our group is going to be a closed group for college students who have helicopter parents that are between the ages of 18 to 22. Their year ranking is not accounted for, only their age range. It is going to be a short-term group lasting 8 weeks, which would be half the semester. Group members will meet up for up to an hour or an hour and 50 minutes. We are counting the extra time for sessions that might last longer than others. So it's going to be, our group is intended for 20 to 25 people, and we have accommodated a location for this. The group will meet at the Student Center in the multimedia room. This is at the SFA campus. The purpose of this group is for students to find support with other group members of their ages and develop possible ways to help regulate their emotions and develop a sense of autonomy in their college years. Next slide.
All right, so when we look into the rationale of having a support group for students that have helicopter parents, we first have to look at the transition from high school into college, which is associated with emerging adulthood. Both Darlo and Zeynep talk about how helicopter parenting has become a lot more common these days, a lot more accepted, as Maria mentioned earlier, and it can make the transition to adulthood a lot more difficult. When you think about going into college, you think about having to meet your own deadlines, having to sometimes figure out what you're eating, having to do group work, and people that are used to having parents or authority figures make decisions for them have a hard time transitioning to this type of work in college. And then we go to associations with higher levels of depression and anxiety. Whenever students do not feel able to make their own decisions, it can affect how competent they feel going forward into the world, which then ups the levels of depression and anxiety as talked about by Darlo. And then when we look at the effect on overall sense of competence and the abilities to make decisions in their own lives, we look at negative self-image, negative self-esteem, and students having a really hard time with their emotional regulation, as said by Zeynep. Next slide.
Hi, okay, so I'm going to do a little recap of what Kristen just said, as well as Maria. Maria had mentioned in the beginning about how there's a difference between parents that have a parenting role as autonomous and the helicopter parents, which is what we are kind of examining today. And if we look back on Eric Erickson's psychological stages of development, he has a stage of emerging adulthood, but before we get to that stage, he has a stage when the child is from 2 to 3 years old, and it's autonomy versus shame and doubt. And Burke kind of talks about this as, you know, the child will know if the parent has autonomy parenting style, they feel comfortable to walk and start growing and do the developmental skills that they are meant to do. But if the child is, if the parent is not allowing them to develop that way, they can struggle with overall development, which can get into the emerging adulthood when you transition. And it can struggle with the stage that he had talked about with intimacy versus isolation, and they can really struggle during that time. Furthermore, the self-determination model is highly discussed in a lot of these articles. And in this the self-determination model, Perez has talked about that the researchers have highlighted that the 3 basic needs, including autonomy, competence, and relatedness, are very important to the population of emerging adulthood so that they can transition. And if they don't have those skills and they have been are struggling with emerging due to the parenting style of their parents, a lot of those can lack. Autonomy, as like I just discussed, is all about where you build the confidence to be able to transition and develop the coping mechanisms to be able to handle certain situations on your own and develop control, such as emotional regulation that Kristen was talking about. In the article, autonomy supported parents, well, that's not the topic, autonomy supported parents, Hong and Jung had talked about, it was really interesting. They had kind of correlated parenting relationship, academics, and if you're the automating parent style versus helicopter parent style. And they found a correlation that if the mother is not does not have a autonomous supportive relationship, that the students that are in college suffer actually with perceived academic control, and they really suffer if they don't have the support from their parents to build the confidence in this new role that they're developing, which I found that was really interesting. And then to kind of connect with those theories, there are the risk factors and that have where the students can develop depression, anxiety due to the fact that their parents, they don't have the ability to maybe feel like they can grow or the coping mechanisms to be able to emerge into the transition as an adult and to start taking steps on their own, which really cause them to lack self-efficiency, poor emotional regulation, have higher risk of depression and anxiety. And all those are talked about within these articles. One point that I wanted to point out was that in one of the articles, it says, actually students that are living with their parents during this time suffer with psychological maladjustment for those who living with their parents. So when they transition, they have a tougher time and develop more of those psychological maladjustments compared to the ones that are still living with their parents, which I found also very interesting. And I have this picture of Marlin on here because he's a really good example of a helicopter parent. If you haven't seen the movie Finding Nemo, he really struggles with letting Nemo transition into his stage going on to school. And it kind of shows a good representation of how much you need to allow your children to be able to develop those skills and how it can kind of give them, not the possibilities to cope and learn how to be self-efficient when they do emerge off into adulthood.
The resources for this group are going to be the multimedia room located at the SFA Student Center, outcome questionnaires, pens. Due to the length of our session, we will be providing snacks, which is going to be chips, cheese crackers, and a variety of candy. We will also provide drinks, which will be bottled water or sodas. And with that, we will provide napkins, paper towels, and hand sanitizer. And then for whenever the students leave, we are going to have cleaning supplies, which include disinfectant spray and wipes.
Okay, so for our group format, we wanted to do it once a week. And as Maria said earlier, it's about 1 hour to 1 hour and 50 minutes accounting for extra time spent with group members, especially since we have so many. And there's a lot of subjects that we wanted to focus on with this group, mainly because there's a lot of risk factors. So weeks 1 and 2, we wanted to focus on introduction, getting everybody integrated, basically talking about what the group is about, and we wanted to focus on parental relationship factors and how those factors are affecting these students. Week 3, we're going to have talks about self-esteem and autonomy. Week 4, we are going to cover strategies to manage depressive symptoms that any of the students may be showing. We're also going to talk about symptoms of depression, and how it may be affecting their lives. Week 5 is strategies to manage anxiety symptoms. We're also going to be going into what anxiety is, how it may be affecting their lives or affecting how they're interacting with other students, or how it's affecting their schoolwork. Week 6, we're going to talk about healthy boundaries versus the boundaries that the students have in reality. This is especially prevalent for these students who have parents that may not have healthier boundaries. And it's just kind of going to be talking about what these boundaries look like, how to potentially push for healthier boundaries, so on and so forth. Week 7 is talking about healthy decision-making skills. This goes back to emotional regulation, talking about how Maria mentioned earlier, the poor decision-making skills that some of these group members may have accumulated over the years with this type of parental relationship. And week 8, we're going to finish out the group with group discussion over the past week's formats. We're going to be transitioning to the end of group. Within each of these weeks, we're going to have a lot of time where group members are free to discuss how they relate to the topics for the week, if they need to discuss any happenings during the week, which also accounts for the extra time that we have. All right, and so for our group goals, we have 2 main goals that we wanted to discuss. The first goal is for the group to be able to be used as a means of support to express emotions about their family relationships and negative emotions. What we're mainly looking to do is to provide a space where these students feel that they can express themselves freely without judgment, and have others that they can connect with that are experiencing the same problems. And we want them to be able to feel like the group served a purpose of being able to support them. The second goal that we wanted to talk about was to be able to use the strategies learned in group to manage anxiety and depression. So emotional regulation with anxiety and depression are kind of the main focuses that we want to make sure that we are addressing with this group. Now, with group outcomes, how we wanted to measure that was we wanted to have the students all fill out an outcome questionnaire 3 times when they come in. So it will be in the first session, they'll fill it out, the fourth session, and the last session. So on this questionnaire, we're going to have several rating systems we're going to have several questions with rating systems on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being experiencing low amounts of these emotions or feelings, and 10 experiencing a lot of these feelings. And we are hoping that the group members will be able to report higher levels of self-esteem and self-control during the 4th and last sessions. And we are hoping that they will be able to report lower levels of symptoms that relate to anxiety and depressive symptoms. And that is our group presentation for helicopter support parents. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you have a wonderful day.
The next few slides are references if you guys wanted to look into any of the articles that we discussed. Bye.
All right, we are at 19 minutes and 44 seconds.
Oh, I have not stopped the recording.